For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services. Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Jupiter's Legacy, Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2? Stick around and find out. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of Jupiter's Legacy, Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2. The synopsis for the season as a whole on IMDb reads, "The first generation of superheroes has kept the world safe for nearly a century. Now their children must live up to their legacy in an epic drama that spans decades and navigates the dynamics of family, power, and loyalty." Okay, so this is a superhero drama that just premiered on Netflix with bursts of action. So you have to be in it for the drama, not for the action. However, there is action. There is superhero action, high-flying stuff, and climactic battles and stuff like that. But don't go in primarily for that. Go in primarily for the drama if you want to have a chance at enjoying this. It's a world that's filled with violent unrest over growing supervillain threats. They talk about how the nation has never been more divided than it is today. I mean, I think it probably, intentionally or not, speaks to the divisions that we sense in America today. There are people divided specifically in this world over due process versus vigilante executions, because the villains in this world are becoming more brutal, more terrifying, more dangerous, more lethal. So that people are calling out for superheroes, the main superheroes, kind of the Justice League, if you will. I think they're called the Union. They're calling out for them to just go ahead and execute these villains when they have the chance because of all the death tolls that they're racking up, instead of adhering to their, what seems like a very traditional old-fashioned code of allowing even the worst villains to have due process, to never kill, and to simply imprison them, disable them, and imprison them so that they can face due process. The moral values of the Utopian, who's the main gray-haired and gray-beard hero here, who's been around since like the 1930s, his moral values are not being accepted and lived out by his adult children, and so there's a strained relationship, as like his daughter is really not interested in being a superhero at all and is instead being a celebrity model and stuff like that, and his son is wanting to be a hero, is living, life as a superhero, but is still kind of under the mentor wing of his father and really falling short in his father's estimation a lot. And so there's a lot of tension there. I suppose it parallels in many ways the relationships between fathers and sons, particularly sons that are moving into a similar field of work as their father, or maybe even the family business, that kind of thing. So I think that there's despite it being these superhero settings and trappings, some stuff there that could be related to by a lot of people. And the son is, he's well-meaning in what he wants to do, but he doesn't see the world the same way as his father. He is undisciplined, he's more emotional, and some of these are things that his father says about him and we haven't seen play out a whole lot, so we don't know, okay, is that just his father's view of his son, or is that actually the reality? I think that there's probably some of that reality present in the son as well, but there's a lot of complexity in terms of how morality is presented here, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's something that I appreciate. There's also flashbacks, frequent flashbacks that deal heavily with the relationships between father and son as experienced by the Utopian when he was younger, in his prime, in around, like, I want to say the late 1920s. And sorry, I'm turning off my phone here so it doesn't bother me again, but I got to remember to do my jaw exercises. Turning this off, I'm going to lose my jaw exercises, and then my jaw's going to fall off. It's told in a combination of present-day and 1920s flashbacks. We don't really know the superpower origins of the Utopian and his allies. These flashbacks from the late 1920s are still pre-powers for him, but they're a nice look into him as a character and kind of like emotionally what his origins are. So it may not be until like the end of the season, I don't know, I've only watched the first 2 episodes, that we really understand, okay, where did his powers come from and stuff. And hopefully, if this series continues, we'll see progression in those flashbacks to maybe move into the 40s, what they were doing during World War II, and then in the 50s, and so on and so forth. I would really enjoy something like that. But I do appreciate the balance between modern day flashbacks. Most of it is in the modern day, but those flashbacks are pretty hefty, and they're not afraid to go into them for a while. So I appreciate what they're doing there. Again, it's all about character. I think if you come into this really interested in a story about characters and the complexity of drama and relationships that can be told in a character-focused story, then I think there's a lot to like here. As far as the cast goes, they're all solid in my estimation. No, I don't have any complaints. No one's really striking to me either, though, as a performer. I think that the heavy lifting is largely done by the story, by the script itself. However, I feel like the actors are all up to the task of what the story requires of them. I just didn't feel like they were like adding things so uniquely that it doesn't strike me as a particularly performance-driven type of viewing experience. Even though the performances, like I said, have no complaints, I think they're all pretty solid. As far as the stunts and visuals, I said at the top that you want to come into this with an interest in the drama side of things to increase your chances of enjoying it. And that's underscored, I think, by the fact that the visuals, I don't think are... I really don't think they're premium streaming television quality. It's roughly CW quality of CG. Lots of characters fly in this, and almost all of them have moments where they just look like they're hanging in a harness. They just don't look completely in command of their body. And I don't feel like their body is weightless and floating in space. I feel like it's just slightly awkwardly hanging in a harness, and that's always a bit of a disappointment to me. That is, as much progress as we've made in visual effects, that since the Christopher Reeve movie, it still just takes a good harness, a good actor with the right body strength to be able to exist and hang in that harness without looking like they're hanging in a harness. It's not that you can see the harness, it's how their body is angled and behaving and stuff. You just kind of have to see it to understand what I'm talking about. Also, the age makeup kind of falls short for me, in particular with the Utopian, kind of the main superhero that's been around for the longest. Clearly, these characters, something made them age more slowly in the past. Again, we don't know their origins yet, but something made them, many of them, age more slowly. And I kind of wish that, as long as that's kind of like the conceit, we just kind of say, okay, they age more slowly, and just give them gray hair. But the makeup itself that's trying to put wrinkles on them and stuff, particularly with the Utopian, it's reading to me as makeup. And I've seen better makeup in film and maybe even television, but something's falling short for me there. But it's a testament to the story itself and the way it's being executed on in other ways, that it's not a big sticking point, doesn't take me out of it. The coloring and the visual designs of the set, costumes, things like that, give it a fairly grounded and serious feel. There are also, a few decent slow motion action shots and visual effects that are cool to look at, But it is the drama that helps me to forgive the visual shortcomings. All right, so as far as themes, is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes of this thing that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? For me, lots. There's the question of due process for criminals versus what may seem morally right. I mean, if this criminal, if there's a really high probability that they are going to just escape again and kill hundreds of more people, does it not make more sense in that moment, when you have the opportunity, to execute them versus doing what you can to ensure that they are given due process by our justice system? So there's big advantages to the justice system that we have, but we also know that there are flaws and things happen and there is injustice, that our justice system does not bring about justice all the time, And so I think we feel that tension now in American culture, where people feel very strongly about things, but rather than talking about them in an orderly way or relying on systems in place to bring about what is just and fair. We have this increased tendency now toward mob justice, both literally in the streets we've seen in the last 12 months, but also in other ways digitally, like with cancel culture. Like, you know, I don't like this, I don't think it's morally right for this to exist, therefore I'm going to encourage other people to join me in making a fuss, making a stink about this so that this person is shut down, so that we can force some kind of a change by force of will, by force of action. And same with shouting down. We've seen this on university campuses increasingly in the last, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years, where if someone has a view that is unpopular, that they are not even permitted to speak, because those attending, there will be some among those attending that just start shouting and chanting so that they drown out the person who is speaking, effectively removing their right to free speech, you know. And so we see these kinds of things where human will is being exerted in a way that sets aside and nullifies laws that have been in place before, freedoms that have been in place before. And so that tension that exists in this story, I think, for me, is very relatable as I think about the current climate that we're living in. There's also the classic question of big government versus freedom. There's a question in this about, like, okay, should superheroes, like one of the superheroes says to the other, maybe we should start getting involved in governing, you know, instead of just being inspirations. And part of their code from the beginning, based on, it sounds like it was maybe created by the Utopian, he's certainly the only one that's really hammering it and saying this is what we got to live by still. But part of that code, apparently, was that we inspire, we protect, but we don't do executions, we don't carry out justice ourselves, and we don't lead. We just inspire and protect and serve, you know. And so I think there's maybe a parallel there, because the guy that's saying we should, you know, govern, the argument against that is, well, then free will is going to be eliminated, because what do we do then if we start entering into governance, you know? And there were questions about, in that conversation, about World War II, and one superhero saying to the other, we should have intervened more, and that could have ended so much sooner. And the other guy's like, yeah, but then what? Then we get involved in Korea and Vietnam and these much more complex kinds of wars and situations, and then what happens to human free will? So where do we draw the line apart from where we've already drawn it, to safeguard against people losing their freedom? And so, yeah, it's that question of, should the powers that be take more control over governing humanity? Should those in power, whether that's the government or, you know, whatever, take more control in order to bring about theoretically a better world for people? Or should we put up with some of these things that go horribly wrong, so that we can retain the freedom that we want to have? And so, yeah, I think there's some jumping off points on that topic. Let's see. Oh, a big one, I think, is parents transitioning, making the transition from governing their children when they're living under their roof to serving as their counselor as they are transitioning into adult independence. And then later in their life, once they are independent and living separately for a long time from the parents, becoming more of a mentor / friend, you know. And the Utopian seems to have really not made that transition well. And as a result, his relationship is very strained with both of his children. And so I think that there's something for us as parents to reflect on, and I think also us as children to reflect on when we are experiencing those kinds of strains in the relationship with our parents. I think we can look at the Utopian and see the things that he wants. He has these ideals that are good ideals, these things that he wants his kids to care about, these virtues that he wants his kids to care about, that really they should care about. But he is failing to execute on passing that down in a way that they will be receptive to, you know. And so I think that as a grown adult children, you know, we can think of our parents, you know, they're probably trying to go for something that's good. They're just executing on it in a way that is really off-putting, you know. So, and then on the subject of those ideals that the Utopian has, I think that just the idea of having ideals as Christians, and it's interesting to note that the utopian is clearly a Christian. He wanted his family to say grace together. Jesus was a significant part of the prayer, and his daughter even kind of mocks him after that, for like, did Jesus help you make the dinner and stuff like that. So it's not some nebulous spirituality. He is a Christian, and a very dedicated Christian, it would seem, but also I would say a Christian that lacks a lot of wisdom in relationships and in how to really connect with people, with his loved ones, and to relate to them in a way that he can bring about the inspiration and pass along the virtues that he wants to pass along to them. And so whether it's in a family context or just some other relational context, I think as Christians, it's good for us to reflect on, we have this truth that we want to pass to others, whether that's just the basic gospel message or whether that's something related to living out our lives in the way that God wants us to, in the purpose that he has for us. We have these things that we want to communicate to others, that we want maybe to call others up to, but so often, I think especially as geeks, we lack the wisdom in how to interact with other people in a way that will result in those things being passed along and received well by them. We are so often content to merely be heard and not considered, and that's an area that us geeks would do well to really grow in giving attention to and developing, so that without love, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians, we're just a noisy gong, and we don't want to be a noisy gong. And the utopian finds himself being a noisy gong in this story, despite really wanting to pass along some good things. So I think definitely some stuff there for us to reflect on. Now, I have no idea what your tastes are in the TV shows, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Vader, ooh, don't miss this. This is worth getting Netflix for a month. What is next? Well, Netflix, let's see, that's going to be like $15 a month. This and one other thing you really want to watch is worth getting Netflix for a month. At least based on the first 2 episodes. It's a drama that you can connect with, which is so important to you, very character-focused, very important to you as well. It's got moral dilemmas with real complexity, given that each character has points on which they are right and points on which they are wrong, and it's left to the viewer to kind of suss out which are which, and different viewers are going to come to different conclusions. And so it's written in a very clever and sophisticated way in terms of the presentation of moral dilemma. And it's all in the context of a superhero world. I mean, there's not a whole lot you could ask for more other than maybe some improved visuals, but really, really engaging experience you're going to want to watch and continue watching. It's rated TVMA for sex, suicide, substance abuse, language, gore, and smoking. Right now, I'd like to take some time to write a tune for pre-made rhyme. The lyrics kind of never change, but the melody gets rearranged. I never know what I'll create to say how much I appreciate Gabriel Stinson, Brian Franklin, Olin D. Branham, the Silkast, Drew Rubb, Winston Crutchfield, Libre, J.D. Myers, and Matthew Ridgway. Thank you for supporting me, and SVP, and CGC, and now to all who hear this tune, thank you as well. Please come back soon. Wanna hear your name in song? Not after this, you don't. Check out our page on Patreon. I felt like I needed a month that was like a palate cleanser. I was like, I don't know if I have any interesting melodic things that I could do. I need something that feels kind of static, something that feels a little bit robotic. I just need a little palate cleanser for 1 month, and we'll see if I cook up something any more tolerable next month. All right, those are my thoughts. I would love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. I'd be grateful. I want to say thank you to the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining over at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. And then, of course, I hope you'll join us soon over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. The Christian Geek Central podcast is the longest-running podcast for Christian geeks with over 600 weekly episodes and counting, featuring audio versions of much of the same content you'll find here, plus exclusive content including weekly news updates from the creators of Christian comics, novels, and video games, debriefing and commentary about what I've been playing, reading, and watching, and my expanded responses to your comments and questions via YouTube, email, or the Christian Geek Central forums. And now, with timestamps, so you can jump straight to the segments you want to hear most. Get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services, and enjoy one more way you can geek out and seek the truth.